Hello, beautiful people of the world. I hope your day has been as awesome as you are. Welcome to the Wine and Gist with Monomoxie podcast. My name is Monomoxie, your host, and I am so glad to have you here. Wine and Gist podcast is a safe space for raw, deep, and unfiltered conversations about lifestyle, dating, and relationships today. We've got a lot to talk about, so grab a glass and let's gist. Okay, so cool. Tight. Let's jump right into the topic for this week. So this week we're going to talk about there's like a lot of must-ask questions on a first date, but I want to zone in and highlight 5 specific questions that I think that everybody in your, adulthood, like someone that's ready to commit, if you're dating to commit, you're dating to be serious, these are 5 must-ask questions for every first date. See, when you're dating in your 20s, it's a lot different, right? Because a lot of times you're not really sure what you're looking for. Like you swear you're in love and you found the one, right? But you're not really particularly sure who you really are. And so you're just kind of navigating life. And that's why a lot of times dating that young, you're focused on like the hotness of the person or really how you vibe as far as like social settings. And it's completely different in your 30s because when you're 30s, and over, maybe you're not in that phase yet where you're looking for some commitment, you're still just kind of figuring it out. That's okay. But to a lot of us, we're just kind of ready to settle down. We're looking for commitment. We're dating to commit and not just to have somebody close to hang out with. So dating in your 20s and younger is a completely different game from dating in your 30s and older. So dating these days is just really fucking exhausting. It's so exhausting. So people who are ready to commit, people who are dating to commit, they just kind of want to get it going, you know what I'm saying, with the right person, of course. So people don't want to beat around the bush. Nobody's down to keep playing this game of maybe she will be, maybe he will be, maybe they won't. No one has that time anymore when you're in that state of mind where you're dating to commit. So I want to lay out these 5 questions that I think you should ask anybody on the first date. And, it's questions that trigger some really deep discussions that will basically either set you guys up for a good path or let you both know that you're probably not going to be compatible in moving forward, so nobody should waste their time. So here are 5 questions, 5 must-ask questions on your first date. So first question is, how do you feel about children? If neither of you have children, how do you feel about children? And if one or the other has a child, or you both have a child or children, the question will be, how do you feel about being a step-parent? I know some people might be like, whoa, that's a little aggressive. A little aggressive is a little scary of a question to ask on a first date. But honestly, it's not. I think it's very cutthroat and straight to the point. Do you fucking want kids or do you not? And if you do have kids, are you open to the idea of being a step-parent or are you not? Because that shit is going to come up down the line. When one person starts having baby fever and the other person wants a skyscraper in the middle of downtown and don't want any freaking kids, but the other wants, a ranch home in the country with 10 kids. Eventually, that catches up to you. So you need to knock that shit off the ballpark, especially if you have children and you're dating for commitment. You need to talk about that shit right off the get-go. Like, how do you feel about being a step-parent? Because that is eventually what that person is going to be to you if you're dating them for commitment. If they're gonna be like, I'm not really sure. Maybe. Don't waste your time. I'm just going to tell you right now, do not waste your time on that. Do not. I'm telling you that one from direct fucking experience. If they're not sure, if they're not certain of that role, sis, move on. Okay, sis and bro, because this happens to be related to single fathers as well. Move the fuck on. You don't have time to debate that. So talking about children is a hugely important first date question. Second question is actually a very, very important one. It's causing a huge rift in society between men and women today. And I think that is something that, it needs to be discussed because it has to do with family values and you cannot skip it. This is the 50-50 conversation. Do you believe that there should be a situation where when you start having children, one parent stays home and takes care of the home and the other parent becomes a provider? Or do you believe that both of you should split childcare and home and work responsibilities in order to kind of bring something to the table as far as 50-50, splitting everything down the middle? Like, what is your belief system when it comes to that? And you need to ask that question, because if that person is not on the same page with you on that, it's just not going to work. It really isn't. And don't think that you can continue to date them and down the line maybe something will change. No, it won't. This is a value. It has to do with family values. And if they believe that, hey, I come from a household where mom and dad worked and they figured out childcare and they figured out all the bills, and that's what I believe should work. And the other person's like, well, I come from a household where mom was always there because she was the homemaker and dad went to work. So you're both from completely two dynamics and you believe in two family dynamics, different family dynamics. If that is the case, it will not work out. So this conversation, the 50-50 conversation, is a very, very important one to have on the first date, right off the get-go. Knock that right out so you know if this person is, going to be a potential or a never see again. See, what I personally dislike the most about the 50-50 argument is the common misconception that it's basically a man working and working and working and slaving away, and the woman is just sitting on her ass and looking pretty and doing nothing with her life. And obviously, in that case, that's not really, that's not a fair, relationship in any way whatsoever, because, you have to give back, right? Because nobody can pour from an empty cup. So you have to fill in the blanks for each other. And a lot of times, maybe it could be 80-20, it could be 70-30, it could be 40-60. It doesn't always have to be 50-50. So I think that each person should just kind of, each individual and couple should reflect on what they have going on and be really honest with themselves, right? For example, if you make $100,000 and you're dating someone who makes $30,000, clearly, if you want them to do 50-50, like split down the middle, you're either going to have to come down to their capacity in order for them to meet the half, or you're going to be forcing them to go beyond their capacity to meet you at yours. In that case, there's no way a 50-50 thing can go on. You're literally making $70,000 more than your significant other. You cannot expect them to go half with you. So I think that things like that should just reflect on each individual person and couple and what they've got going on in their lives. I've witnessed a situation where a woman was completely resentful and she just began to be completely just hating this guy. And it's because of a situation like that where he literally made 3 times her income, but they were on that 50-50 everything. I'm talking like they would go on dates and he would pay for it, but then send her a cash app request for half of the cost of the date. I mean, it was ridiculous. And they're living at his capacity because he likes to live a high life. And like I said, he makes 3 times what she made. And in that case, she was finding herself trying to get second, third jobs in order to meet up her half. And she was cleaning out her bank account every time to meet up her half. Meanwhile, he was comfortably meeting his half, and he had time to go out and party and travel with his friends and just kind of like leave her behind because she couldn't pay for her half of the trip. I mean, like, it was just that it's so painfully 50-50. It's like, oh my God, like I could never, ever deal with that. And she became so resentful because she was struggling. She couldn't make ends meet, and she's living with a grown man who makes way more money than her, 3 times more than her. But he was expecting her to fruit half of their lifestyle. And that, to me, is extremely unfair and unrealistic, right? Like, she literally cannot meet you at your half. You make 3 times more than her. So, of course, she's going to be resentful. She's struggling, and she starts to be like, well, what the fuck is the point of you? Like, you're supposed to have your partner's back. And in that case, I think that he should have been paying more for their lives only because he can't afford to. But that's just me. That's just my opinion, and that's just my take on it. And I definitely stand by it, because I'm not going 50 with no man that makes 3 times more than me. You got me fucked up. I'm not doing that. So I've also heard a lot of men say that they don't display that provider I guess, aspect of them off the get go because they want a woman to prove herself that she's not some kind of gold digger. Which, first of all, this conversation, the gold digger conversation, always like makes me laugh a little bit because honestly, no offense, but you kind of have to have gold to be worried about somebody digging it. Like seriously, like not to be a dick or anything, right? You have to have gold to worry about somebody digging it. Okay. So let's like wipe that off the table unless you're like rich, right? Because if you're not considered rich, if you're not in the upper class, that's not even an argument you should have because you need to have gold to be worried about people digging it. Okay? So, this particular conversation does not tend to happen much earlier on in the relationship because most people meet each other in an independent state, right? Both of you have your own place of some sort. You have your own car, maybe your own jobs. You're living separate lives and you're just kind of like meeting somewhere, maybe staying at each other's place and getting to know each other through that process. So, a lot of times you have kind of a display of each other's independence off the get go. And when you do decide to merge your lives, most people don't talk about the expectations they have for merging their lives, right? Because maybe suddenly you are going to be expected to do the thing where, well, you make more money, so you're going to pay more, but you're expecting that you're merging with someone who was independent, so you're thinking that they're going to be cool going half. So a lot of people don't have this conversation until they're deep in a merger with each other, living with each other into a full-on lease, and then these clashes are happening. So expectations need to be spoken about, right? Because you can move in with each other on the state of 50-50, but maybe one of you has wanted to go to school for such a long time, but because you had to keep two jobs, you were not able to go to school and further your aspirations and further your career prospects, so to speak. And now you have a significant other who makes so much money and is able to help fruit wherever you are short. So you're thinking, this is a great opportunity to go back to school. And it's great, right? So now you go back to school and your significant other is like, we didn't talk about this, but whatever. They keep going, right? Because they want to support you, they want to be supportive. And then school is getting hectic, and now you have to drop your job from full-time to part-time. Now you're making even less money, you're bringing even less in, and they're fruiting even more out of their pocket. And now they start to get aggravated and start to, pick fights and just start to be overall in a bad mood because those were not their expectations. They were not expecting that they'd be paying so much to support you while you further your aspirations. So these conversations need to be had before anything gets serious. And I say first date, knock it right out. You know what I'm saying? Like, so is this person going to waste my time, or is this person going to be like a real potential serious someone that could maybe work? Knock it right out on the first date. I will say this though, that a lot of people don't seem to have like the couple progress vision, like if that makes any sense. Basically what I'm saying is, okay, so both of you are working right now, you have some job and you're splitting the bills or however your agreement is. And one of you has like a raging potential to make 3 times what you're making right now. They just need to go to school and do a program, maybe like a trade school, and do a program for 2 years and get certified, right? And this program is kind of hectic, right? It's a rigorous program. It requires them to be full on focused, full time. 2 years, knock it out. They will make 3-4 times what they're making right now. So the couple that have a progress like vision or whatever, one of you will see to it like, okay, well, you want to be this, you have the potential to be this. In 2 years, we could be making a lot more money than we're making right now. So how about I'll take on, the household, I'll take on the bills as far as paying for everything, so you don't have to work and you can stay in this program and gun through these 2 years and get to that job that pays you 3 times what you're making right now. Someone with that kind of vision, a lot of people don't have that. They're so consumed in, well, for 2 years, I'm going to be paying this. For 2 years, I'm going to be the only one doing this. And it's like, well, yes, but In that 2 years time, maybe when now they're making 3 times what they're making, maybe you can quit your job and pursue something that you've wanted to pursue, and they can take over the bills while you pursue it and go further with your aspirations. So a lot of times that like whole idea of taking turns so you can both achieve each other's goals, a lot of couples don't have that. And so you're forever stuck at the same level because nobody has the opportunity to move forward because you won't let each other do that because you're both afraid. One of you or both of you are afraid of taking over and paying for everything for whatever reason, whether it's the fear of being abandoned or whether it's the fear of being duped. I don't know what the situation is, but a couple that works like that tend to be a lot stronger in their future because they're building this together and they remember how each of them were there for those steps. I'm not saying it's always perfect because you still have situations where, shit happens, but I'm just saying that that vision for progress as a couple is something that I've noticed that not a lot of people have. And it's kind of imperative for your progress. We're not living in the old times anymore where, the woman's place was the kitchen and the home and the man's place was work and the honey and home, picket fence dream shit. We're not in that world anymore. We're in the world where we have women running for president and shit. We have women in positions of power. We no longer live in a world where the woman's place is the home. So when it comes to this 50-50 argument, I say just do whatever the fuck works for you, right? Like go with what works for you in your bank account, in your household. If it's better for one of you to stay at home, do that. If it's better for both of you to work, do that. But just make sure that you have come to terms with what you expect of each other. Have that conversation and discuss your expectations, and you're good to go. Moving on to question number 3 of the must ask questions on your first date. How do you handle a disagreement with your significant other? And how do you communicate when you're upset with them? Now, this is a far more important question than many can imagine, right? Because some people get verbally abusive when they're mad at their significant others, and then you have the screamers, the yell out and scream in frustration, like in your face or maybe just like wherever. Some might find something next to them to break. They get destructive. Then there's some people that might purposely cheat to try to hurt you in the worst way. Because I actually had a friend who dated someone like this. Like every time he was upset at her, he'd go freaking cheat. It's just ridiculous, right? And then there are people that get physical. I mean, all forms of abuse is horrible and bad. But physical abuse, now you're playing with your life. Your life is in danger here. So, you want to know how this person reacts to, issues with your significant other. And then you have the people who have a healthy sense of self-control. They'll take a while, go cool off. Then they'll come back and they'll talk to you calmly to try to come to an agreement and a compromise and a solution. So this is actually a very, very important question because you kind of want to gauge how this person reacts to issues in the relationship because, well, issues do occur in relationships. That's perfectly normal. You're going to piss each other off at some point down the line. You're going to make each other mad. You're going to make each other upset. You need to know how that person reacts to these things before you proceed with them. Question number 4 brings it back to the family values discussion. So I think it's important to kind of ask the person you're dating how their relationship is with their family and how that affects them. Right? So you have 2 types of people. Maybe someone that was raised in like a crack house situation, high and drunk parents, and they become something way better. They become doctors, lawyers, and someone goes, you came from this background, how come you're this person? And they'll say, well, I grew up around crackheads and I did not want to become a crackhead. And then there's the other person who had the same situation and they become a crackhead, right? And they ask them, how did you become this? And they say, well, I grew up around crackheads, so I became a crackhead. So there are 2 types of people on how their families affect them. There's the one that says, I will never be like none of you. And there's the one that says, I am the way that I am because of you. So I think that this is an important question to ask people what their relationship is with their family, because not everyone has a great relationship with their families, and that doesn't necessarily reflect what type of person they themselves will be. Some people just really have toxic family members, and cutting themselves off from that was a good thing for their progress, right? So it isn't always a red flag when somebody's not in good terms with their family, which is why you want to ask, why. I mean, obviously on a first date, that level of like the why is a little, that's a little intrusive on a first date. But I think that on a surface level, they can kind of talk about how that relationship has affected them in the sense of, does your family relationship motivate you to be a better person, or does it give you an excuse to not, like, kind of thing, because like I said, there's a person that makes an excuse that I am this way because my family was, and then there's a person that says I am this way because I hated everything my family was and I wanted to be nothing like them. So definitely ask that question. What is your relationship with your family? First of all, what is your family dynamic? How close are you with your family? What is your relationship with them, and how does it affect you today? How does it affect your upbringing? How does it affect you today? And like I said, some of these questions are like kind of deep for first date, but I think that they're very important to really get to know what you're getting yourself into. You know what I mean? And honestly, the easiest thing for anybody to talk about is themselves. So really, they're also just kind of great conversations. So you're not like staring at each other, looking at, listening to crickets and have nothing to talk about. Well, I'll talk about this deep shit, right? Just talk about it. And people will tell you kind of what you're getting into based on the answers they give you about their lives. When it comes to having kids, though, 100% check on their family dynamic. Check on their family belief system. Check on their family lives. Check on all of those things because it matters. When you're having children, these are people that you're potentially going to be dealing with for the rest of your entire life. So it freaking matters. The thing is, even if things don't wind up working out between you and this person, at least make sure that you're still going to have that quote unquote village. Because baby, it does take a village. And if you don't have a village, that definitely sucks. It makes things significantly harder. If you have money, lots of money, then a village isn't so much needed because you can just pay for help. But if you are still kind of building your life financially, you're not quite sitting pretty, it takes a village. So make sure that you check on the background of this person before you're going to procreate with them, for those of you who still have that choice. So last but certainly not least, what is your ideal residential setting? Now, this matters because you're talking about where you're going to live, where you're going to settle down and live for pretty much the rest of your lives, where you're going to plant those roots, and that's your family home, that's your home. You're going to sit here and probably pay this mortgage for the next 30 years, whatever the situation is. This matters, right? If you're dealing with somebody who believes that they will end up in a country home surrounded by lots and lots of acreage, they want some outside dogs and they want some outside toys like some ATVs, and they just want to live the country life and go hunting on their property and whatever the situation is, right? And you would very much like one of these modern, fancy, like upscale, like skyscraper loft apartments in the middle of the city, right? That's what you want. That's the life you want to live. Well, it's probably going to clash because they want to live in the country. They probably don't like the life and the lights and the noise that the city has. And, you want to live in a city and you probably don't appreciate so much of the quietness and the seclusion of the country. So finding a balance is going to be tough on something that's like so, on two separate spectrums that different. It's going to be tough finding a balance. So you want to talk about your ideal residential setting. Hey, where do you think you're going to end up? I like the beach. I think I want to retire on the beach. I think I want to plant roots at the beach. And you're like, I'm feeling the mountains. I like it there in the winter. It snows. I can go snowboarding, blah, 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 blah. Whatever it is that your ideas are, talk about it. If you're dating for commitment, talk about your ideal residential setting because that absolutely matters. Now, obviously, there are many, many, many first date must ask questions, right? But I just feel like these 5 that I highlighted are some of the really strong ones that not only lead to deeper conversations, but it also kind of gives you a deep glance at the other person before you proceed. Like, these are some of the things that break a lot of relationships because they get to that point where this is now on the table and they've invested all this time and all their hearts into it and bet each other's families, like invested everything into it. But then they get to these crossing roads that they can't really agree on because these were not things that are discussed off the get-go in order to kind of see that they are not necessarily compatible for each other. Infatuation always make people ignore the red flags or the differences and just kind of like purposely not ask hard questions because sometimes people just don't want to know, at first. Because at some point the rose-colored glasses will come off and eventually you're left in a state of shoulda, coulda, woulda. I should have seen that coming. I should have, I could have known. I would have done this. I would have acted differently. I never would have come this far. But it's like, knock out these important things right off the get-go. And it sucks when someone that is like physically, you're right, physical attraction, they're on it, you're vibing with them as far as like, personalities or maybe social settings, but there are these in-depth things, these in-depth values that you don't really meet each other, see eye to eye on. You can't ignore those things and, stay with the surface, right? You can't stay at the surface level. So talk about these things. It is absolutely freaking important. Now, I don't know about you, but at some point when I was in the dating game, I was so exhausted. And, I was just serious about my time and efforts. So I was just going next on motherfuckers like I was on MTV. Like, I was just weeding them all out and cutting ties long before my heart gets involved or any of my time gets involved. Like, I just wasn't about it. Like, look, are we going to be good or are we not? Are we going to be sitting here arguing about compromising on our values or are we not? Like, it's just, I don't have time for that. I'm exhausted. I'm ready to commit. I'm ready to settle down. I'm ready to meet someone who is in the same space and mindset, who has the same goals, wants the same things as I do, and we are compatible. I was there. So I was on a next, like the MTV show Next? That was me. Like, what? I didn't have no motherfucking time for any of that. Okay, so before we clock out for today, I have some major advice to my adult grown folks, single out there and searching, right? Date someone who already is, not someone you think has the potential to become, okay? That's infatuation, not reality. Young folks who are like not really ready to settle down and are just seeing what's out there in the world, they can play those games. They can play those I see potential games. But like when you're a grown folk and you're ready to settle down and commit, you're dating to commit, you don't have time for that, right? If you're ready to be off the streets, date someone who already is what you want, not someone who might have the potential to be that. All right, beautiful people. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end. And thank you so much for tuning in. This marks the end of our episode for this week. I love feedback, guys. So please comment, send a message. Tell me what you think about this week's episode. Tell me what you think about the 5 must-ask questions on your first date. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and all the other socials at Wine and Just Pot. Until next time, go on and be great.